to for them to understand all the different options that they have and choosing when they get to the right age and not starting too late or too early.
Well, string connecting to that is like when all the students are I mean, when a lot of students are choosing multiple subjects at hand, sometimes they can't relate to each other. Like, for example, reading and writing, they're closely connected, or math and science, they're closely connected. So it's also important that a student has to learn multiple subjects, and that can also help brain functioning and help the student overall.
You bring up many great points, Jason, and I definitely think that it helps increase cognitive function. And this has also been scientifically proven that having a wider variety of knowledge from different fields like math, science, social studies, English, Spanish is extremely important to have these, because you never know when you might need to incorporate these skills during your lifetime.
Yes, many students tend to neglect the idea of attending core subjects and feel as if they're forced to. And in a way, I guess they are. But that doesn't mean the core subjects, math, science, social studies, and English, aren't completely necessary. The skills that you learn in those classes can definitely be used in real life. Let's take word problems and a math problem, for example. Those are real life scenarios and real life circumstances where you have to apply the skills you've learned in math in the real world.
Well, I guess that's a good point because when you're interpreting life skills in the real world, for example, if you take music, you might think music might be your future career and you just really love the melody and everything that goes with it. But sometimes, what if you haven't just what if your thing is to do something else and you just haven't tried it yet? Or for example, if you haven't tried tech and you really don't think it's not that good, but maybe if you at least tried it, then maybe it might become your future interest and maybe it might become something related to your job. So I think it's all so for that reason, I think it's also important that students should take multiple subjects.
That's a
You
good point, Jason. Oh, sorry, you can go.
Okay, thank you so much. You bring up a great point, Jason, that you definitely may not be certain on what you want to do yet. However, that is precisely why electives are such a great thing in the middle school year and even in elementary school year for fourth and fifth graders. At least that's the way it works at my school. Because I, in fact, switched electives from sixth grade to seventh grade because I wasn't necessarily sure if I really felt in that. I really didn't feel like that was something I wanted to do. And that is precisely why this should be encouraged. You don't have to decide what you want to be in life for sixth grade. You can have some fun. You can explore the different options. So when you do get around to high school, you can make a more concrete choice.
Speaking of when you're choosing, what do you guys think is a good age or at least grade level to start choosing your subjects that you want to be able to take?
I believe that a good time, Rishi, would be starting at around seventh or eighth grade, when students are starting to mature and are starting to decide what exactly they want to be in life. They're starting to narrow down. And eighth grade, I believe, is a great time for that, because the students are becoming teenagers. And as I said earlier, they're starting to narrow down, and it's right before high school. So eighth grade for me would be a great time.
Eighth grade for me as well, as everyone is like Yash mentioned, everyone is trying to get to teenagers and capable of making their own decisions. However, I think seventh grade is a little early because you're still exploring.
Well, I also think somewhere near the teenage years, and that's around when high school, the end of middle school, eighth grade, and the start of high school, ninth grade, because when you really think about it, the students have been taking electives for 2 years, and I'm pretty sure they should think and narrow down of the subject they really want to focus on, they really want to choose their career on. So I think when the age of teenage starts, like eighth grade to ninth grade, then I think students should be able to pick their electives.
Do you guys think that sometimes schools end up putting a lower priority on electives? Because personally, I think that electives should have the same amount of importance as the core subjects. Because I know that high schools and colleges, something that they want to look for and see is that the student is just not athletically or completely academically minded, and that they also have extracurriculars.
I'm really
Well,
glad that you brought up that point, Rishi. I was just about to touch on that, so thank you for that. So definitely schools put less priority on electives. They see it as something that you just do for fun. They never see it as a field or a potential interest for the real world. It's always a career in math or science or even writing or something. And they completely neglect that you might want to go into baking or you might want to go into the art field because it just seems insignificant, which is simply not right.
Do you guys also think that there are sometimes stereotypes put on us about whether we have to go into the math, science, technology, coding fields?
I think that it's not necessarily a stereotype. It very well could be, but I think a big part is how the times are changing in the sense that these days I think a lot of people are choosing jobs that are centered more towards STEM, and have something to do with maybe biology, genetics, robotics, computer science, and IT careers.
Yeah, and I also think if we're talking about it in a younger age, like when you're still not deciding your career and you're still exploring interests, I don't really think there's one major part of it, which is parental pressure. And parents may just want what's best for their kid, but their main priority is to make sure that they get a steady job, they have a steady life, without actually asking the kid potentially what they want to do. And it's both parent and school pressure. Be- okay, so do any of you guys think that they should add more elective options itself in school? Like, is there like a limited choice to electives? Like, there isn't as many options as you would like?
yes, I think so because like as you know, like a lot of celebrities, like they've dropped out of high school just to do the things they want. Like for example, there was this kid and then he dropped out of high school and then just to focus on his music career and then finally one day became a famous musician. So I know it's important to focus on the core subjects, but there should definitely be more subjects added for students to prioritize.
Yes, the fact that some people had to feel the need to drop out of high school to pursue their real interest just isn't correct. They should be given the option to explore their interest in a school setting as well, because there are very limited choices, and perhaps adding choices such as TV production and etc. for those who might want to go into the movie field one day, because that isn't nearly talked about as enough.
Do you guys think that maybe the reason that schools aren't doing this is because maybe schools, because as you guys know, schools need to pay a lot of money and need to use a lot of time to prepare all of these classes, to hire all of the teachers. So do you think the reason might be that they're not giving as many elective options is because they don't want to spend all of that money and they believe that electives are, as you guys may have mentioned before, are a lower priority than the core subjects, math, English, science, and social studies?
Yes, because not only about the money, but on the news lately, a lot of teachers have been dropping out of their jobs for many ample an ample amount of reasons, and not and then with all the shortage of teachers, it will be harder to teach more subjects, and the school will have to focus more on the core subjects will be which they think will be more important for a child's future.
Now that you bring it up, Jason and Yash, it's something to definitely consider that it's not entirely up to the school board. There's the amount of teachers to think about. It's also whether or not the teachers would be willing to teach during their free periods, which are for their electives, which is a lot to give up. Like you're only breaking the day. So many teachers might be unwilling to do that. However, that doesn't change the fact that elective options need to be prioritized. Does anyone agree, disagree? Any points regarding that, what I mentioned?
That's a good point, Harshini. I think that electives really should be prioritized, but I think that the amount of options that schools offer could also go up, like giving more art electives, as in not just taking art as maybe painting or sculpturing, but giving electives that are different types of art. So you could have a painting elective, but then also an elective that, as you said, could go for photography, and then one for sculpturing or pottery, some things like that.
Well, that's a good point, but when the school's choosing a lot of electives, right? And they've heard that there are so many polls that students want more options for school, like such as like coding. I think there's coding sometimes, or other subjects. It can be anything basically. But sometimes when the school is trying to bring up all these subjects, maybe sometimes, like Yash said, they won't really have enough funds to bring up more subjects. And since the rate of teachers have been dropping lately in England, in Britain, then it will kind of make it harder for that area. And who knows if they're dropping here. And it will kind of be harder to fund and not only pay the teachers an equal pay for teaching all of the students.
So, therefore, do we think it's impractical for more elective options given the regarding facts like about teacher employment?
I think schools, no, I do not think it's impractical, mainly because schools really should try to employ the teachers that they can, the best teachers that they can, and still give them a good pay so that they don't need to drop out and stop teaching the kids.
I'm not talking as if I know what it's like to be on the school board because I obviously don't. I'm 13 and I don't know what it's like to be a principal or a teacher. But from a student perspective, I think it's clear that electives need to be more prioritized and that they should definitely put more effort into it. Because if the effort is put and it doesn't work, it's a different story. But it's just being completely neglected. Like electives are just something you do for fun versus something that you could actually pursue, which isn't even talked about enough.
I definitely agree with you. Harshini, going back to a different point about extracurriculars and how colleges and universities might want to might want to see that a student is not just academically performing well, but also performing well in extracurriculars. Do you guys think that that would be a benefit for students if schools put if schools added more extracurriculars?
Well, extracurriculars are more precisely like clubs and after school activities, which from my perspective, I don't think we need more of. I think maybe if you have a club specific idea from a student suggestion, they should be more willing to take it in. But I think currently clubs aren't necessarily something to worry about. It's more of an actual elective course, which I think are very different things. But that's one thing I'm really glad that my school does. However, if any of your schools do differently and there's a lack of club options, feel free to say.
There's actually another point I want to bring up, and that's how do you think students might go about choosing a subject? Not even, it does not have to be extracurricular, it could even be a core subject, but how do you think they could go about choosing it if they wanted to choose a different one than the one that the administration is giving them?
So for starters, it's whether or not they're interested in it. First off, would it be good for credits? Would it be something that could benefit them in the near future? Would it be something that they can feel that they could have a little bit of fun in, but also learn something at the same time? Those are the things I think will be running through their head when they're determining whether or not to take the course.
Yes, I agree with that because when the school is choosing more elective options in the school, I think it might be harder for the schools sometimes because they have to really see or and then sometimes they can check what the students' interest is by doing polls or just doing votes on random sites, etc. And when the student is interested, then only the administration can add those clubs or subjects or extracurricular class. Because for example, I think the main reason why the administration is not adding on some other extracurricular is because of outnumbering. Because when there are more people, like kids, students that want these clubs and no more clubs, then there's only a few others sometimes in some places that want clubs that they're really interested in, which makes the administration go for the larger prop. population.
Just to give you guys a little perspective, what do you think would happen if, let's say, a student only learned about math and English, but didn't learn about science, social studies, and all of the other important subjects there are? What do you think would happen to that person during their lifetime?
I think they might have a few troubles because just how there are many reasons in the real connecting to the real world. If a student only learned English, for example, how would they understand how engineering works, or for example chemistry works? They wouldn't really understand it. And for example, if they're taking money from their bank account, they won't even understand how much to multiply or take because they haven't learned math yet. So I think it might be really tough for that student.
Well, let's just imagine in a world where you can choose even the core subjects that you're taking. And let's say a student only takes math his entire life, completely neglecting English because he hates English. And then when he's put in a real world scenario, he knows nothing about English. So to be quite fair, he fails. And I definitely think that brings up the same point that core subjects are entirely necessary. They aren't something that should be neglected. And if given the choice for core subjects, wouldn't necessarily be the best idea for those younger because they can tend to choose classes with friends or teachers that they prefer or subjects that they prefer, even though everything is necessary. In addition to that, Jason brought up an excellent point about the survey idea, which actually hadn't come to mind beforehand. Although we can't talk to every single student in the entire district to ask what club or elective options they would like to incorporate into school, you can definitely talk to them about, like, if you get a survey about like a rough amount of like how much you want to add. That's a definitely great point. Honestly, that's a really good idea. The administration should take that into consideration.
Also, going off of the polls idea, I think another thing we could do is if your school individually is kind of divided into certain sections, like my school, we have 4 teams for each grade, then the teachers in each grade could maybe make a Google form or something, and they could give it to the whole team, and then the whole grade would then just choose kind of future subjects that they might be interested in, which the administration could then take into consideration.
So does anyone have any specific complaints regarding their school? Because I know that the greatest thing about this discussion that we're having right now is that we're actually students. It isn't a discussion by teachers or board members who are like way older than us. No offense, but we have the more student perspective of it. So does anyone have any specific complaints?
Not exactly. I think my school is doing a lot of different things to help students by putting in a lot of clubs, by giving students the choice for electives, because a lot of schools don't have the privileges that my school does. They don't get the chance to choose their elective. They sometimes don't have electives, or they're automatically selected for them. So I believe that my school is doing the best that they can to help students like me to become something great in life.
Although there is something that schools can improve on, we're incredibly thankful for schools for giving us the platform for something that we can do in the real world. Today, we touched on numerous points regarding the topic at hand.
Going from how core subjects are valuable to the expansion of electives to providing more options for students.
Although they're still maturing, they should still be given the option to explore all the possibilities which are going to help them in the future.
And use the electives they learn to help them in life.